Hey everyone, welcome to Love Over Coffee, Voices Not Heard. This is a podcast and a platform for the marginalized, the silenced, and the abused. We are having some tech issues with our guest this evening. She does not seem to be able to hear us, but I can see her. I can see Bernadette. Bernadette is my other guest. Um, Bernadette, if you can take a moment and communicate with Kimberly in chat, maybe you can help her to figure out if it's her sound. I don't think it's her camera because I see her, but for some reason she can't hear me, and I don't know why.
Okay.
Okay. Um, I'm going to go ahead and just take a moment to welcome you again to Love Over Coffee, Voices Not Heard. And Bernadette is going to go check with our guest and figure out what's going on with that. I am going to introduce Bernadette to each of you this evening. But I do have a video that I want to play at the top of the hour because I know that many of you may not be able to stay for the entire podcast, and some people will watch it on the replay. And I want some of the important stuff to be at the top of the hour. So I'm going to go ahead and show a video from Glenn and Claudia Sinculi. They live in Palm Springs, California, and their daughter, Nicole, was murdered at the age of 25. They have a petition right now to keep their their daughter's murderer in prison because he's up for parole for the third time. And I do want to share their personal message with you. So here we go. I'm going to share the screen. So if you'll give me just a moment.
Hi, this is Glenn Sinculi, and I'm sitting next to my wife, Claudia Sinculi. We are the co founders of the Nicole Sinculi Foundation. This was founded after a very tragic loss of our youngest daughter, Nicole. Sweet Nicole was violently murdered in her sleep by her boyfriend, or so called October 16th, 2005. He used the claw part of the hammer, embedding it and hitting it 13 times, leaving the hammer in her head, and then washing his hands in the ocean. The whole world changed that day for us and our family. We've had some healing. It'll never be complete, still haunts us to this day. The man who took Nicole's knife is now fighting to regain his. Who was Nicole? Nicole didn't walk into a room. She bounced and sometimes even skipping with a belly laugh that would make a grumpy old man smile. If you knew Nicole, she would blow a kiss to you, grab it in the air, or if you kissed, she would grab it in the air, put it in her mouth, swallow it in midair. Nicole had the softest blonde hair, and her eyes were blue green. Nicole loved the Doors, Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, and went through a hippie stage. Nicole played the trumpet. She had a very clean note in that playing. She was in peer counseling and on the swim team. Yeah, she also loved to draw, and she drew on everything. And her sister says, we were two peas in a pod, and they were. Claudia?
Yeah, Nicole was beautiful and she never knew it. She never acted like it. She was lively and wholesome and faithful to her friends and family. She was mischievous, especially in her teenage years, where one time Glenn had to nail her bedroom screen to her shut so she wouldn't sneak out, and she drove her car way, way too fast. She could be stubborn and funny and giving all at the same time. She had a heart for the homeless and ran for special causes. She studied nutrition and was best friends with everyone, including her sister Danetta, and especially Danetta. She loved sunflowers and rainbows, and she believed in Jesus. Her greatest strength was her love for life and her love for others. Her weakest was her magical thinking and her empathy for others. Her spirit was innocent and she died for love. Nicole is the reason we started our foundation, but the purpose of it is to be a soft place to fall and to bring awareness to domestic violence by telling Nicole's story. We're now 17 years into our journey and our third campaign to keep a convicted murderer in prison, the person who murdered Nicole. He's still considered a danger, has no insight and no remorse, only for himself. You can Google Nicole to read her story. We won't go into it here. We also did Nancy Grace in 2022. But we have a petition online to sign, and it looks like this. And this is the link to it. If you would go online and sign the petition, help us fight to keep this dangerous person still in prison. Help us to keep him there. Thank you, and let's just fight on the side of justice. Bye for now.
God bless.
So, um, I think it's interesting, Bernadette, that we are not only talking about, on the one side, domestic violence and someone whose murderer is in prison. When our guest this evening, Kimberly Biggs, is on the opposite. And I can see both sides because the judicial system, like most systems in our country, um, is messed up. You can agree or disagree, you can believe or not believe, but I think that most people would assume correctly that educationally, politically, socially, economically, and judicial systems have challenges when it comes to um, a fair level playing field. And also, when you think about black and brown people. Um, so, at the top of this broadcast or podcast, I want to introduce you. Hello, Shirley. Hello, Becky. Bernadette, the Divine Connector. Sometimes I just call her B. But Bernadette is my dear friend who lives in Mississippi. And Kimberly, our guest this evening, was doing something from prison to purpose because, again, we know the system for black and brown, the judicial and the legal system for black and brown is not necessarily doled out the same way as it is for whites. Um, but I do want to tell you that Bernadette is working behind the scenes of the podcast to help with some of the social media posting, to help with some of the guest booking. So I really appreciate those aspects of what she is bringing to the podcast. We have grown enough to need a little help, need a little support, and that is a good thing and a beautiful thing. And Bernadette has been the divine connector for a while. She has been with Dr. Dre from MTV Rocks, or yeah, I think I never get this right. Um,
Raps, MTV Raps.
why do I always get
Rapping.
this wrong? It's
You said
because
rap.
I'm white. It's because I'm white.
Because
I know it
it's
is.
MTV.
Ugh,
That's why.
MTV Raps. And he
You're
came
welcome.
along. He came along at a time when hip hop was not getting the attention that white MTV was. And MTV, of course, wanted to capitalize on the hip hop movement. And so in the 80s, they came up with the MTV Raps, Yo MTV Raps. And Dr. Dre was one of the hosts, one of the VJs. And so Bernadette does legends with him, and she has made those connections, and then she has made lots of other connections, um some of which I am also privy to, in the sense that I've met some of these people that she has met, and that's always exciting. Laura Cowan came through her. She is a big domestic violence advocate in Ohio. I would not have known Laura if it had not been for Bernadette. Bernadette is in those clubhouse streets, as we call it, and she's made a lot of connections over there. So, if you are, I'm going to say at the top of this, if you are in need of some scheduling support, some posting support, some social media, PR kinds of stuff, nonprofit grants,
Storytelling.
storytelling, please reach out to Bernadette. She is more than able to and willing to help you out. So keep that in mind. So, Bernadette, I don't know what has happened to our guest, but that's okay. You and I can carry on. What is it that you would
I
like to
might try
share
to
with
call
us
her in
about
if you want
what's
to.
going on?
I was going to let her call. I was going to call her and see if I can get her on a speaker at least.
Oh, okay.
Do that. Maybe we can do that. Let me see if she'll pick up. Um, let's see. Oh, don't forget the other guest that I brought to you. Here's Darius right here. So you remember you had Darius and Tony. He's
Who
waving.
was it? I'm sorry. Oh yes, oh Darius. That's right. I see his hand.
So
Hello,
that
Darius.
was
How
his
are
first
you?
podcast host. His so that was Oh, give me the charger. So let's see if I can call her. I'm not putting her on the spot. I kind of gave her a heads up, but this battery may die. And we'll see if she can try again because what
Yeah, I just
Kimberly is
plugged in
doing,
my
I think, is
phone as
truly
well.
amazing. Okay. I don't know if we have her
Apologies.
number or not. But
Apologies for the difficulties we're having this evening. It could be some of the difficulty rests with StreamYard. There's no way to know for certain.
oh yeah, we do not like StreamYard. Dr. Dre is not a fan of StreamYard. They got to do better for accessibility.
I
So
haven't had any problems with it until tonight, but I don't know. I haven't spoken to Kimberly enough to know if it's her connection or what it is exactly.
I've had troubles with it. It's not always the best for me, but I'm up there with Dr. Dre with it. Don't know. I'm gonna I tried to reach out to her, but what she's doing, we would like to tell the audience what she's doing out here in Mississippi and beyond. One of the great
Let's
things,
hope she
the citizens that we have
answers.
to consider as women would be women who are reentering back into society, and that's what her nonprofit is about.
Right. Her nonprofit is From Prison to Purpose. And like I said, as much as we started the podcast with Nicole Cooley's petition to keep her abuser in prison, on the other side is we know that black and brown people are incarcerated at higher numbers. We know that they are sometimes incarcerated for longer for the same kinds of sentences as other who are not black or brown. And so Kimberly's platform is From Prison to Purpose, and she is specifically looking for 30 formerly incarcerated women to help build confidence, career, other opportunities, things like that. So, did she answer, Bernadette?
No, and I wanted to see, I did get on live to see if y'all did. You see my invitation on live? Did you see that? The invitation I had on live?
No, I didn't. I don't see it. But that's all right.
I got on and I hopped off.
So we will try to reschedule her. So so Bernadette, what is going on with you in regard to some of your endeavors regarding social media, scheduling, PR, those kinds of things?
Okay, I'll say like some of the things that I'm doing is just PR. It would be things like keeping. I believe in raising awareness. That if you're going to be one of the experts out there doing something, you should be aware of what's going on. And I'm excited about today. I get to raise awareness and talk about my dad because today is International um, Elimination of Racial Discrimination Day, and for that reason, my father here in Mississippi was a part of helping to eliminate racial discrimination. He was one of many or few people back then in 1965 that were implementing Voters' Rights Act in Mississippi. So I would, for me, if I, which we do, there's things that we probably should do for my dad's legacy foundation and everything. I would raise awareness in his name, based upon today's it's not a holiday, International Day of Coming Together, based upon a peaceful demonstration being done in Africa, and that peaceful demonstration was interrupted during peace times with the police coming there and violently. Unfortunately, they had like 180 casualties. So we're observing that day, and like I said, observing that day is a day that I can bring awareness about local racial discrimination,
I was going to say,
as
Bernadette,
well as
what
international.
is
Yeah,
the I guess what is the racial climate in Mississippi? You know, because it has a history of not being one of the states quite on board with some of the laws as they changed. I mean, Mississippi was considered um, a part of the United States that didn't want to change. So, what are racial relations like now? And I know you cannot speak for all, but just in general, can you give us a sense of what Mississippi is like these days?
I can do even better for you, and you know me, I'll find something to smile about. And it's kind of bizarre, kind of strange. And tell me what you think about this. We recently had an anchor lose her job here in Mississippi,
Okay.
due to something she said, and I'm going to build it up, Gene. I'm going to try to build it up. She lost her job. She's not brown person or black or brown. She lost her job because at the end of a story about Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg, who is a Mississippi native, she
Mm-hmm.
used the phrase "for shizzle my nizzle," and the nizzle, look at your reaction. You know that right there just happened last week. Okay,
Wow.
and yeah, it's
Oh, we just lost Bernadette. I think StreamYard's mad at us tonight. She'll be back. That seems crazy that somebody would say something like that in this day and time. Wow. Interesting. This is where I think that sometimes we don't hear ourselves, and we don't realize to what degree we have truly been indoctrinated with ideas that are systemically racist. Even if you are not personally racist, so much of what we have been taught to think and say and feel, um, the wheels that turn in your head, um, all right, Bernadette. I was just
I'm back.
saying
Was that too much?
that's all right. No, no, I don't. I don't think that people realize the things that they say, do, think, and feel are off are often racial indoctrination from a place where there's not a thought process. It has become so ingrained in who we are and what we do, what we think and feel and behave, that we don't realize. And I'm not saying it's an excuse, and I'm not saying we should ignore it, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be in
You
cancel culture, because at this point, everyone should be aware of what they're saying and what it sounds like, because Google has all kinds of things out there, and you can find out
and
all
if you're
kinds
in
of things.
broadcasting, yeah.
Right. I mean, like I said, and I'm not surprised that someone said it. Although I'm surprised that someone said it without realizing, because we had a similar situation here. We had a
Mm-hmm.
broadcaster who, after the royal baby was born, made
Mm-hmm.
a this was after Megan's baby was born, mind you. And it was based on um saying something that was about a monkey,
Mm.
and and you know, he got a lot of flack. Okay, he got a lot of
Yeah.
flack, but when he apologized, he might as well have not apologized, because he basically tried to
Right.
say that he didn't realize what he had said. And I'm thinking to myself, unless you have lived your entire life under a rock, when someone showed shock, when your co host showed shock at what you said and tried to stop you from saying it a second time, and you did anyway, it tells me that, number one, you don't really care. And second, you
Exactly.
think you have the right to say it. But after all was said and done, he lost his job, got another job, and I'll be damned if the co host didn't go with him. And I'm like,
See?
and I refuse to watch them to this day. I've always thought he was narcissistic. I always thought he was arrogant. I never liked him. And he, of
This
course,
is
proved to
we have
me.
I call Kentucky I call Kentucky with the atmosphere cousins to Mississippi. And back in October, she also used Grand Mammy, to an anchor of talking about pie. So October to last week, October there were tears and an apology, but I think there's
And to me,
something
it's
new
too
that
little, too
tensified.
late. It's
Yeah,
too little, too
yeah,
late.
too late, too little, too late. Yeah, and I
Mm,
think it's something that people want to try to get away with in 2023, 2022, because of the recent tensions that we have had, in our
right.
country, you know. And I think people kind of want to show their true colors if they can, and can they, if they to see if they can get away with it.
Well, I almost feel like
You
people
know.
are to the point where, I mean, listen, and I just had an argument, because it can't be a discussion when the other person doesn't want to even hear what you have said, even if they disagree with what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying. But I just had an argument with someone who basically told me, I am sick to death of hearing about systemic racism, that we should get back to a place of personal responsibility and accountability. And I thought to my and I thought to myself, I could argue back. And then I
Right.
realized that arguing with the wall would probably have more of an impact, because
Mm-hmm.
when you say to me that you don't think systemic racism is real, I'll be honest, I don't know where to go from there, because
No.
to me,
Mm-mm.
I mean, there is no conversation. If you and the thing is,
It's
I
not.
said
It's that.
to this individual, I said, if you don't think it's real, then I don't know what to say to that, because she was coming to me with the place of, she is a white woman who dates black men,
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay.
I am there as well. Okay,
Right.
but I realize that dating black men, number one, does not make me an authority on anything regarding black men. But second, it
Mm-hmm.
also does not automatically mean that I don't have um, unpacking to do of my own whiteness. And it also doesn't mean that when a black woman looks at me, that they can't have an emotion or a feeling about me dating their men. But
Right.
at the same time, I still realize that how they're looking at me is not systemic racism. They're looking at me from a prejudicial standpoint. We all have
Mm-hmm.
prejudices, we all have likes and dislikes. Systemic racism comes with power. The black
Right.
woman doesn't have power over me,
Mm-mm.
and I don't have power over her as individuals, but I know that we are still part of a system that does have power over black and brown. And when I say systemic racism, I'm not calling out white people as racists, but man, that is
Yeah.
what they hear, Bernadette. And
That
once they
I'm telling
get
you, and
their,
mm-mm.
I mean, white fragility is real. And like I said, once she went there, she closed the door on any conversation, because it's like, I don't want to hear that systemic racism is real. And it's like, but it is real. I'm not calling you racist. I'm not saying that you don't have maybe something to say in your neighborhood or your community about the fact that you feel marginalized, but it is not the same level of marginalization that a black person feels in our country.
No, and Tina, this is a former Miss Mississippi. Do you understand how much
Oh
she should
my God.
have known better? Miss Mississippi, a former Miss Mississippi. She's older. That's not an excuse. You can't be. And you're a journalist in Mississippi. The people who should be most aware should be a woman who was a journalist who was Miss Mississippi. So that's kind of like a hot topic I just gave you. We'll probably see it nationally, and I'll send you the video clips. But I mean, understand, if in case that old friend of yours is listening, Snoop is from Mississippi. I don't even think Martha Stewart tried it. I don't even, I don't think, and for I can say it for shizzle my nizzle. But you know what the last word is for. And that last word is not okay to say. Just like
Mm, mm, mm.
grandmammy, grandmammy. I mean, mammy is almost like fighting words. You know this.
Well, and
You know this for our heritage. Maybe if you're from Hawaii, I don't know. I'm sorry, Karen, Hawaii or somewhere where you just don't have the racial tensions that we have every
but
day. We are
Bernadette,
known for it.
like I
Yeah.
said, unless you've been living under a rock, and I used to tell my students came from all over the world. and my students would get those, some of the words that they had learned from
Yeah.
TV, from songs, from movies, from music, from this or from that, okay? And some from their friends, okay?
Yeah.
And I would say to them, because they would use the N word with their
Mm-hmm.
friends. And they would say, well, my friend uses it. And I would say, your friend has an understanding of that word that you don't and that you never will.
Right.
And as much as there are people who are black and brown who use that word, there are also people, black and brown, who don't use that word. And I
Right.
said, the way you use it or the way you choose to use it, that word is owned by a community of which you are not a part of. And you do not have the right to try to figure out how to use that word. Your best understanding of that word is it's not your word and don't say it.
Right.
No matter how
Right.
you mean it, how you think you mean it, how you understand it or think you understand it, it's not your word. And that's it.
Very not. Those are babies. Those are your babies that's younger than you. Okay. But we have no business telling a generation that's our age and above. Snoop's age. Snoop is older than me, probably, right? And above the code that you can't use that word. And professionally, as us both being former educators, those are some. They have us walking on eggshells. Things we can and cannot say. Taking
Right.
everything right. We almost have to watch what we say, watch what how we say it. I'm one of the most sarcastic people you will know. In the handbook when I was substitute teaching, one of the years I was there, at the been there for a little while, they said don't be sarcastic with the students. They get that's a rule. I'm like, how the heck? I
Right. No,
can't
I
help
know.
myself. But
I've heard.
but
I've heard the.
yeah.
I have a friend who was a black teacher in a predominantly white school. Even though many of our students were, so our students were diverse, but our teacher population was not,
Mm-hmm.
which is very common. And she was being observed by the principal, and she said something that may be viewed as by whites as a typically African American type phrasing, and she got called out on it.
Mm-hmm.
And several of us went to bat and said, she is black and brown and she is communicating with her students in their language. There are so many students who never see a black or brown teacher. Why would you make that
Right.
your cause when there is such a much bigger picture that needs to take
Wow.
place than how she said something that they understood completely, but somehow offended you as the white person in the room, and you're there to observe her and how she interacts with her students? She's interacting with her students in a way they know, love, and understand. Why would you call
Yeah.
her
I
out on
mean,
that?
makes no sense. I mean, I grew up in a household where I was told not to say finna and things like that, and don't say ma, right? But when I got into that classroom with the students that I had, if I did not adjust to what they were used to hearing a little bit, they would have ran all over me. Okay. And
Right.
then when I did have that sarcasm or whatever, just being myself and just being down to earth, cultural, maybe culturally and just who I am. Because that's my mom's side. My dad's side is kind of like, you know, um, kind of like more down to earth, more hood a little bit, I guess. My students, some of them could relate to me, and then some of them could relate to. Then I had the ones that I had those that had ankle bracelets on and whatnot too that could relate to me not being I guess, conforming to behaving another way. My day one,
Right.
I did that and tried it in an alternative school. It did not work. But when I was a little more down to earth and real with just my sarcastic mouth at that alternative school, Tina, that probably had me kept me afloat with being sarcastic
I was
because
gonna
that's
say,
what they were
I
used to at
mean,
home.
and the thing is, I mean, I worked with, I worked with a diverse population. Like I said, at the school where at several schools I've been at in Fayette County,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that I'm white, okay, and I know
Yeah.
that I can see the differences between how a black teacher interacts with a black child, and that if I interacted the same way, it would be seen as different. And I accept
Yeah.
that. I don't question that. I don't question that as somehow that's wrong against me. No, because like I said, so many black and brown children never see someone in authority like the classroom teacher that looks like them. Okay? And
Yeah.
that's a sad thing. That is a sad thing. Okay? But
Yeah.
I
It is,
also
and just
realize that when a black teacher says something like, um, you know, too many of our men are in prison and you steal something again and that's just where you're going to end up, for that to come from a
mm,
black person to a black child, there is an understanding there culturally. If I say that,
yeah.
I realize that I'm part of the system that would put them there.
Yeah.
Whereas the black
Yeah. You
person
yeah.
is saying it in a way as it's as loving as possible. Um,
Yeah. I mean, something
you
like
know,
tighten up. You know what, bruh? You better tighten up. I'm sorry. I've spoken that way as a teacher, and that's that. And I meant, and they some of them might not have known that side, but it clicked. It clicked for me to be like, oh, okay, she ain't playing. When I'm like, bruh, you have to tighten up.
mhm,
This, I'm so serious. And I have sometimes been like, don't do not
right.
try me. And that's not my main personality, but if you push me there, that's what kind of what they're used to. That was it. I'd be like, and like I said, I had the alternative school students. It was like, why you always rolling your eyes at us? I didn't even know I was. That's my personality. That's my personality. Okay, and then I see it.
But Bernadette,
Y'all, yeah.
you have you have a child that
Mhm.
has um, a difference in learning,
Yeah.
neurodivergent. So
Mhm.
explain to us how you have raised him to be aware of what's out there.
Mm, keeping in mind who I came from, I can be. I think I might be. I'm one of those people that's probably too tough. I mean, I did the same thing with my students. I'm too tough with that. I don't. I remind him who he is statistically, and in this system, and in this state, and how he has to watch himself, remind himself. And then at times,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I didn't have to remind him. My nosy neighbors would remind us and call the
Mm.
police on a little 9-year-old boy getting groceries out of the freaking trunk into his own apartment, Florence,
Wow.
Mississippi. Okay.
Wow.
His what was his birthday, Tina? Was that his 16th birthday or 18th birthday, 16th birthday? He's walking,
Lord, he
doing
has
his
grown up so much.
teenage boy thing, and he walked near or past a daycare. Police was called on him then. But luckily, with the personality that he has, and we were a block away from the police station, whenever he would miss the bus to go to, I think it was might have been elementary school or high school, one of those, he would go to the police station and ask them for a ride to school. So he made friends, luckily, with the police, the local police, and they always because I was like, oh, he got out and walked on his own at 16. he think he grown, I'll be there when I get there. They was like,
Right.
nope, nope, no, you're not gonna do our you're not gonna do our friend like that. We bringing him over now because we know he's a good guy and he's our friend. And we want him to just, he was kind of worried, so we brought him on home, and that's our friend, that's our guy. So he built a friendship with them, um, that unbeknownst to the people that called on, him at the
Thank
daycare, and he was
goodness.
just
Thank
walking by, minding
goodness.
his own business. Yeah, yeah, and I mean um, and that's an exception to the rule, and
Right.
we not that he's yeah, that's an exception to the rule work. But I have do I he hears all kinds of things that people would call probably a conspiracy theory, but I have my beliefs of how I know the world sees him. I'm like, I mean, I go all the way back
Right.
to somebody asking me about his athletic skills when he had that growth spurt in junior high, and I didn't like that approach. I was not flattered by that at all. I was not flattered by somebody asking a coach asking my son if he was going to play sports in college because I'm not a big fan of draft day.
You see me
Okay,
rolling my eyes, Bernadette. I'm an
so
eye roller too.
yes, yes, yeah, I was like, okay, and it was a college coach, but I'm not gonna say who. I was like, that's not for me because there's something
Well,
within me that got triggered
look at the
by somebody
comment
looking at my son's side.
that's look at the comment that's on the screen from my friend Becky, who says, I get treated more nicely than others when I'm the only white person in the room, and I don't appreciate
Mm-hmm.
it. In other words,
Mm-mm.
some people want to say that if you're born poor, black or white, that it makes no difference, but it does, because there is a difference between being born poor white and poor black, because poor white is
Yeah,
still seen as a little bit above poor black.
yeah, yeah. And just me being a teacher's kid, I got we do the same thing was like, oh well, since she's this person's kid, teacher's kid was a good thing. But being the first black supervisor elected in my county, I got two different realities. I got away with some stuff, and there's some things I could not get away with. There's if I
Right.
threw paperwork like my friends did, and the wrong teacher saw it, who did not like my dad being on the school board of education, on the board of education, they would say, "Oh, we need to get your daddy, not my mom, my dad, the first black supervisor elected to
Mm-hmm,
the first black man
mm-hmm.
elected supervisor who was on the board of education to come see me at school." They wanted to interrupt that man's day because they were not happy that he was elected into that office.
Right.
Okay, so like it was, yeah, I'm telling you, it was almost like having two different passes. But like I said, my mom didn't stir up the pot like my dad did. I didn't mind. I stirred up the pot like my dad did more so. My stepdad, Munz
Right.
Towers, and because I mean, I had my days, but I was like, I want Spanish here. They need to get us Spanish here, Dad. That's we don't have it, and I didn't know that he and I were kind of working together with
Right.
the system, and I really would, I would have I would whenever I saw myself learning things with vocabularies that they didn't teach me. I actually had a teacher that did not like that I had such a broad vocabulary. And everybody was like,
Mm-hmm.
where did you get the vocabulary from? I said, from home. I said, at home, we had to do the dictionary with everything, and we had to watch the news every time it comes on. I didn't learn that here. That was my mouth as a
Right.
student talking about my vocabulary and the level of education they were giving me. They weren't giving me that level of education where I would have that vocabulary. That was from at home. Like I said, where it was instilled by my mom and my stepdad, my dad, who told us,
Right.
don't ask me, get a dictionary. Don't ask me, get an encyclopedia. We had encyclopedias and whatnot too. And I had speaking of a teacher rolling their eyes, I had a teacher that rolled their eyes at me for saying that I did not learn that big vocabulary at school from these teachers because I didn't because they kind of like would be hate on you a little bit if you were that
Right.
smart black kid, you know. And I was
Right.
smart because my brother and I were competitive in the standardized test, which everybody doesn't get that
Mm-hmm.
luxury to actually have a fair chance with standardized tests because standardized tests are not they're biased. They're not for
They
everybody.
are
You know,
biased. They
like I
are
said, we
biased.
had yeah. So like I
They
said,
are
the background that we
They're
had,
definitely culturally
yeah.
biased. Well, Becky has
No, I mean,
another comment. Um, when you have nothing to hide and aren't doing anything wrong, you aren't afraid of the police. I guess my flip to that is,
not
though,
true.
sometimes
Not true.
black and brown are picked on for being black and brown in a small town, in a place where they don't seem to be in the right place at the right time, and in an area that's being over policed. They can be um I mean, there's been lots of cases of police brutality.
We still have
um,
sundown town.
Driving
If you're
while
in a
black,
sundown
walking
town,
while black. I mean,
yeah. I mean, if you're in a sundown town, then you got to be out of there before the sun goes down. It doesn't matter if you did not do anything or not. I mean, that's for most black and brown people, that they still kind of exist. And speaking of my dad, he told my brothers when they would turn 18, he was like, "All right, now you're statistic. Watch what you're doing.
right,
Don't watch." That's how I raised my son. Even though I can tell sometimes he thinks I'm a little extreme, but he understands still too, because someone on the neurodivergent, they don't, he doesn't see racism like that because he sees he's different within his own race too.
right,
He's a
right,
different black man, a young man. He's different amongst his own people. But so I mean, but I still instill those things, and unfortunately, life has taught him some lessons about our people, our neighbors, and how things, how much the more thing. I mean, he's a young man. He didn't even, for that comment, for you, when you haven't done anything wrong, you won't be upset about the police or whatever. My son did not prepare me for his behavior. Is this? He did not prepare me for substitute teaching. That's how good his behavior is. He did not. He never did anything. So
right.
his behavior and how he feels about the police has nothing to do with his behavior and whatever. But he doesn't totally fear them, but he
And his
doesn't totally trust them.
interactions, and Bernadette, it sounds to me
Yeah.
like his interactions with the police, while they have been innocent to his side, he unfortunately still had interactions based on other people's perceptions of his presence.
Right.
And
Right.
that's a whole
Innocent.
other,
Innocent.
yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, what's hard? How are you stealing when you're getting groceries out of a car? You're a kid and putting them into an apartment. What are you stealing? You stealing? Are you
right,
stealing from the car and putting it in the house, and you can't drive?
yeah,
And then if you're just walking by daycare, I mean, no, I mean that right there is a small town and people walk. You know,
right, right,
and like I
yeah,
said, at that point they were friends with each other.
right.
Yeah, so that right there, like I said, I really, like I said, his behavior is, I didn't know kids acted like that or this or that, and he still never was the child to prepare me for
Well, and
behaviors.
I've seen where, um, you know, when someone is arrested by the police, the simple thing is, sometimes when it is a white child arrested for something, you get their high school graduation picture. But for a black child, you'll get a mugshot. Um,
Right,
or you'll get um, some explanation as to why this black child was educated and had gone to good schools and was so well behaved, as though being any of those things or being none of those things justified what happened when they were accosted by the police or maybe hurt by someone else. It's almost like, as long as they were a good black kid, none of this stuff should have happened. But it really shouldn't have happened even if they were a bad black kid. I mean, but it's like the media wants to
Mm-mm.
immediately say, well, they were a straight A student and they caused no trouble and they were just so good and so well behaved, as though
Hmm.
that somehow justifies or doesn't justify why something happened or didn't happen. It's interesting to hear the media and the way they spin things at certain times in
Yeah,
certain ways.
and I mean, there's things like second, was it no zero tolerance? Zero tolerance has I've seen some babies go get suspended for drawing a gun in the right teacher's room, and they're in first grade or
Oh, yeah.
kindergarten, or
Right,
holding
right.
up a little stick that looks like a gun,
Hi,
and in the
Patricia.
wrong. I don't mean right teacher. I mean
Invitation.
not right teacher, but the wrong teacher's classroom. That's a write up. That's it.
Right,
But who
right,
at whose
right,
discretion is that a write up? Would I
right.
write that child up? No. I would tell them, you can't do this, and and knowing me, I would tell them why, and say
Hmm.
this is not gonna cut it. But who is the teacher that would write that baby up for drawing a gun or for holding up a piece of paper that's made like a gun? Who is that teacher? It's happened here
Right.
in
It does.
Mississippi,
It does. Yeah,
but
it
I'm not
does.
saying it's a yeah. And so if
It
that's
does.
not some type of racism, I mean, but I know it's a precaution, but is it really a precaution? If it's just a piece of paper, or if it's drawn, or if it's a stick that looks like a gun.
Well, that's where there
It's
needs to
tough.
be more conversations, but instead, I, I think we've gotten to the point where what we know logically isn't what we feel emotionally, and sometimes we're so afraid to have any conversation that we just turn a blind eye. And turning a blind eye doesn't mean that it doesn't exist or that we don't need to have a
Yeah.
conversation. And and I don't know, like I said, I mean, right or wrong, when my friend basically said she was tired of hearing about systemic racism and that we needed to talk more about personal accountability and responsibility, I agree with the one side. Okay, we do need to talk more about personal accountability and responsibility. But there's so much more going on systemically as well. We can't ignore that conversation because it's uncomfortable. And I don't know how to make it comfortable, but I do believe that until you're uncomfortable, you'll continue on in whatever you think, say, do, and feel. And that's not good either, because there are a lot of things going on in this country that we need to have a conversation about. Trauma and how that
Yeah.
impacts the rest of your life, mental health and
Yeah.
how trauma impacts your mental health and the rest of your life, and how
Oh
being
yeah.
highly sensitive or empathic or narcissistic or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
it's all related
Or just
to
being
trauma.
being young, because these children here, these young children here have we have now have faced more than we ever have faced with things like the pandemic, George Floyd,
Oh my
lockdown,
goodness.
all of these things. They faced
Breonna
that.
Taylor here
And
in
for us to,
Kentucky.
and Breonna Taylor. So with the lockdown, with all those things happening, I think George Floyd was during the lockdown or something like that, I think. Um, these kids sat at home and learned for a while. I've gotten into a debate with someone saying that and in the frontal lobe, some teenagers need to an extra. They need to get up later and start their day later and things like that. And it was like, I started school at such and such time. They should too, and so and I gotta and so that with that being said, these children have faced lockdown, right? And we're doing now on a constant basis, looking at these screens all day, all night. And so they have a different type of exhaustion. And then I just heard on yesterday on PBS that, the mental trauma from the pandemic and lockdown and things like that is like no other mental issue, mental, what is the mental health having a blanket where it was a large effect of mental illnesses, where where people have still are still coping with all of
I
that.
know I
We
still
coping.
am.
We had the mask. We had the vaccinations. We had the mask and things like that the children had to deal with. These children are nothing like us. Should we hold them to the same standards we have? No. I
No.
mean, like I said, they've gone to school online for a long, long time. They had to worry about
Bridget,
their
now,
towns with George Floyd.
I mean, I realize that due to trauma of abuse, and then couple
Yeah,
that with pandemic isolation and domestic violence
yeah.
isolation, I realized that I'm not back to being 100% out in the world. I realized
Mm-mm.
that
Not me either.
it's kind of comfortable not to have to deal with the world. And the thing is, that's what they were talking
Hmm.
about on the show I was watching about highly sensitive people. Highly sensitive people are not introverts. Highly
Yeah.
sensitive people are actually extroverts who have a hard time with a lot of overstimulation, a lot of noise. And I realized that I go some places and I am so overstimulated, I just want to go home.
Yeah.
All of the
I know what
noise,
you mean.
it's too much. I can't, it's like, what do you tune into? You're like, and that
I want to tune it
hypervigilance.
all out. Right. Yeah, I want to tune it all out. I mean, and then I'll say this: like I got background noise now, so I guess we'll at the top of the hour, and we have an hour. I can go. There's people that kids that didn't. That, what, they didn't do well being cooped up and stuck in the house with somebody that they were relieved to get away
Right,
from every
right.
day, where school was a safe place. School was a
Mm-hmm.
safe place and a
It's
place to
true.
eat
It's true.
and to not be hurt and things like that. Of actually domestic violence and that type of abuse, women and children were subjected to more abuse
Mm-hmm.
during the lockdown, during the pandemic, than it increased.
Yeah.
Domestic violence and
True.
abusing its children increased at that
Right.
time. And
True.
how selfish of the world to not even pay any attention to that, and not understand that, because I think, boy, you and I both probably have had some kids that, I mean, I had some kids that was like crying summer vacation. You're like, okay, this baby is upset about summer vacation. Summer vacation is breaking their heart. And so you
Right.
kind
No,
of
I
wonder why
know.
is that baby so upset.
I know that I still deal with sometimes, um, you know, I don't always know what to do with downtime. Like downtime,
Yeah,
you know, we created the system based on the farming calendar across the nation.
yeah. That's
And
I
just
try
like
to
you
tell.
said,
People don't know
we
that. They
don't
don't get
have
it.
that anymore. Our young people are not out
No.
farming. I know my
Mm-mm.
state, Kentucky, is not growing tobacco the way we once were. My brothers grew up,
Right.
housing tobacco, but tobacco is not a crop the way it was in the
Yeah.
60s, the 70s, the 80s. And yet our calendar still starts in August, and it used to actually start in September, but now we start in August, and then we go on this marathon August to May. You know, if we
5 days a
split up
week.
that time differently, some school systems have gone to 9 weeks on and 3 weeks off. And the 3 weeks
Yeah.
off is a week of remediation for some kids, a week of enrichment for some kids, and a week of total closure for other kids.
Mhm.
And then in the summer you only end up with 4 to 6 weeks off. Instead of this 3 months off, it takes you, I know that as a teacher, when you start in August, it takes you till January to relearn and to re get those kids back in gear
Yeah.
from 3 months off where they did nothing.
Yeah.
We need to
And
think about
it
that
really could be a
time.
beautiful relationship to make, to make adjustments to get off of
Mm,
that farmer's calendar and get into the modern world. And I don't know, maybe we will text our students. I don't know, maybe we
I
will,
know. I've thought
we will
about it.
email them some a little bit too. Yeah, and maybe we'll email them a little bit too and check, and not just see them all the time, all that, the different times, but get, heck, we really should have cut down the school day, and actually
Well,
probably had hired a lot of people for mental
but
health
Bernadette, that's another
hour
thing.
or whatever. It
Some
should have been,
districts
mental
are
health
going to
should have been
4 days a
implemented back
week
into the
now.
school. Yeah, they need
Some
those
districts,
days to get mental health.
yep, some districts are doing 4 days a week now because it is too much planning for the teacher
Hmm.
and too much pressure for the student to be 5 days a week.
Yeah.
2 days off is not enough to recoup from the craziness of a
No, they
school
need
week
that day of the
when
week that the
there
counselor's
aren't
office
enough
are open.
teachers. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
So
they might
it's
need to do counseling. Hmm.
right. Well, as you said, in the summer, if we're going to keep to this summer thing, okay, just like we have now really no snow day, because now whenever we have a snow day, they announce that it's going to be a non-traditional instruction day and students should log in, okay?
Hmm.
But why not in the summer? If you're going to stick to the 3 months off in the summer, as you said, why not have teachers Zoom with their students one time a week that says, this
Yeah.
week this is what we're going to do so that we don't forget, or how is everyone,
Yeah.
just a check-in. Hey, how's your summer going? Anybody doing anything fun? Have you been swimming? Have you been this? Have you
Just
been
a
that?
discussion board or something.
Something, right? A discussion board, anything that would bring a connection, because Bernadette, you and I both know education comes down to building a relationship with a child. And if you lose that relationship
Yeah.
and it takes you till December to get a new one, you're not going to get much from that child until that new relationship is established or an old one is
Mm-mm.
reignited. That's why some
Yeah.
schools districts will say teach kindergarten this year, and when they loop up to first grade, you teach first grade, so that you're not trying to reestablish a
Right. I mean,
connection.
that's
And
a
so,
kindergarten to me. Kindergarten. Mm-mm. That makes sense. That kind of makes sense. That might be I didn't substitute kindergarten because
right, so
the
take
babies were
kindergarten, and then when they
babies.
move up to
Yeah,
first grade, you move up to first grade with them as their teacher. And
that makes
imagine
sense.
if you did that. Imagine if a kindergarten teacher moved to first grade and moved to second grade and moved to third grade, and they had the same teacher for 4 years. Now, mind you, if you don't like the teacher, I get that. But imagine if you built that relationship over the course of 4 years and how well a teacher would know you
I wanted to
and
do
what
it.
you
I mean,
know
it
and
was
don't
yeah,
know. It's
yeah.
interesting. Well, I know that we're running out of time, and I know you have a busy schedule. I want to say again,
Yeah.
our guest tonight had some issues technically, and we will figure that out. Okay. I want to thank Bernadette for stepping in. Bernadette is my good friend. We've known each other now for about 10 or 11 years. But in the meantime, she has become social media and PR. And so the posts that I've been writing are actually written by Bernadette. So when Bernadette sends me a flyer, I'm going to post that. So if you are in need of
Okay.
social media help or PR help, scheduling, looking for guests, things like that, working with nonprofits, helping to prepare a guest to be on. Um, reach out to Bernadette.
SEO
I am
optimized,
able to
SEO
help as
optimized, and
well, but
everything.
Bernadette is doing a lot of the legwork, and she's awesome at it. Like I said, she's been writing some of my own posts that I've been posting. Um, and I really appreciate that. I will tell you that Bernadette is not free in the sense that she is worth her weight in gold. And as much as she is my friend, um, she is not. I told her, I said, stop working for free. Stop working for free.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so she is worth her weight in gold and always was. But I just want to make sure that people realize that um, Bernadette charges a little bit for her services, but it is worth it. And it has saved my sanity on more than one occasion. So I really appreciate that, Bernadette, not only for your friendship, but for your support and your expertise.
Well,
So
thank
thank
you.
you so much.
I mean, it's my pleasure. I think that, and really, it's because I think that way anyway. With a little bit of
Right.
psychology, like I told a CEO I used to work with, I'm like, social media is not social media. It's actually psychological media. And so,
And
if
she's
you
got the
that, if
hashtags,
with
like,
that, yeah,
because she puts the hashtags in. I'll be honest, I don't know what hashtag to put in. I don't know what to do. But Bernadette's been out in this world now for a few years with Dr. Dre and some other from radio, and so she knows the hashtags to put in to bring people in and that kind of thing. She's been helping to write the post for the guests to share. So listen, I I I am
speaking of
one person,
hashtags, Tina,
but I can't
have
do it
I mean,
all.
after a while we're gonna get
Yeah,
hashtag love over
yeah,
coffee some traction, and if somebody wants to find
right.
any of your shows, they will find them all by using
Right,
that. So it kind of is like a tracking system. Kind of, you can keep up with it. My hashtag is JBF Legacy, or I share the hash. It's really Dr. Dre's hashtag, hashtag Knowledge Me, because he had a song called Knowledge Me, and it's one of those. It's a the fifth pillar of hip hop knowledge. So Knowledge Me, hashtag Knowledge Me, is basically
okay,
how you can find a lot of things that Dr. Dre has. And so the same thing is happening with hashtag Love Over Coffee with your brand. Your brand is
all
getting
right.
its digital
So
footprint placed. Yeah,
I have
every platform you're on.
a ticker going right here. Please like, share,
Yeah.
comment, watch the real change, and hashtag love over coffee. Hashtag love over coffee. That way, people will be able to find what they're looking for in the future. And I've been trying to remember to do that more. So, I do want to thank you as always. And next week, my guest, I believe, is going to be Aunt Pat and Karen. I call her Aunt Pat. Patricia Jones, right there. I see her. Patricia and Karen are going to come on, and we're going to talk a little bit about Women's History Month and some things going on in domestic violence and both of their stories and how they have overcome. So I do want to let you know, Bernadette, that they will be the guests next week. They're checking schedules because Pat has a radio show, and I don't know exactly what time and stuff that it is, but I will keep you posted and we will keep you posted. And so stay tuned to the Real Change page, REEL Change Lexington, and we're on Facebook. I am Tina Real 1111 on TikTok, and I am Love Over Coffee 1111 on Instagram. My Tina Real 1111 Love Over Coffee got hacked, although it is still out there. But I want to make sure that you know it's now Love Over Coffee 1111 on Instagram, and Tina Real 1111 on TikTok. I'm on Facebook as Real Change. You can follow my page at Tina M. Durbin. and I have a couple of groups. So Google me, you can find me, message me. And Bernadette's out there, and if you want to find her, let me know, and I'll make sure that you can get in touch with Bernadette. So,
Bernadette10k.com.
all right,
Bernadette10k.com.
all right. So,
Shout out to 10k cards. Yeah.
thank you so much, Bernadette, for being on. Um, Tuesdays at 9, Love Over Coffee, Voices Not Heard. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.